get started, I want to thank our sponsors, Surfshark VPN. If you don't know what a VPN is, it stands for Virtual Private Network, and it is there to help hide your IP address and prevent hackers from stealing all your information. It is especially useful if you work on public Wi-Fi networks or hotspots a lot. It can really prevent your information from being taken, and it is also super helpful in accessing blocked websites. For example, if YouTube is not available in your country, or like I said before, to access different libraries from Netflix or Amazon Prime, or to access Hulu, for example, which I do. I use my VPN with a Hulu account so I can watch American content. And it's just super, super helpful, especially in this day and age with so many people being home all the time and having to be online for everything, basically, and a lot of online shopping is going on. A VPN is super, super helpful in protecting your information. And Surfshark is one of the absolute best VPNs I've ever used. They are the only ones I know that work with US Netflix and Hulu. And they're also very, very affordable. So if you would like to sign up, then please use discount code ASMR Zelda for 83% off and an extra 3 months free. Now let's dive into today's video. I realized that I still owed you guys a recap of the last episode of Unsolved Mysteries. I don't really know what happened. I know that I didn't have enough time to take all my notes before I left for Christmas, and I was going to do that video when I got back, and then I just completely forgot about it, which is interesting because I actually thought it was the most interesting case out of the entire second season. Now, I do think that it's not going to be necessarily a super long video because there's not an awful lot to go off in this case. But let's just dive into it and just talk. So the last episode of this season focused on two toddlers called Christoper Dansby and Shane Walker. Christoper was 2 years old and he disappeared in May of 1989. Let me get the exact date for you. So it was May 18th, 1989, and his mother Allison took him and his brother to the park. Now they lived in the Martin Luther King Jr. Towers in Harlem. It was like, as far as I know, it's described as a housing project, and like Harlem is considered a more poor area of New York, and not a particularly safe area, although I've been in Harlem and I think there's a lot of history there. I actually find it a very fascinating neighborhood to go through, and I've never particularly felt unsafe, and I don't know how different it is now versus in the 80s, but it is, especially in the Netflix episode, they talk a lot about how dangerous it was in the 80s to live there. Now, there was a playground right by the Martin Luther King Jr. Towers, and they played there often. So Christoper's mother went to the store and left Christoper with her mother, his grandmother. And when she came back, like half an hour later, he was no longer there. Now, what I find very, very interesting about his story is that his grandmother was not the only one. There were 5 family members in total on the playground. Now, I don't want to judge that because I've been at playgrounds that have been really busy, and I think you lose track of kids very easily. Like, you need to watch them like a hawk because there's so many kids running around. I get that it's not always easy to keep track of them, but I think because of this, police really focused on it possibly being a family member. So there was a custody battle going on between his parents, and his father lived in Florida. Now he came back to New York to be questioned and was ruled out as a suspect. Then they also focused on his mother because she had a past of drug use. But that was also ruled out. But I feel like, and the family feels this, and I can understand it, that police lost a lot of time focusing on it being a family member rather than it being a third party. Now, police did search the entire area. They got scuba divers in case he might have drowned in the nearby lake. They also brought police dogs in to pick up Christoper's scent, but ultimately, no sign of him was found. Now, 3 months later, on August 10th of 1989, a 19-month-old Shane Walker went missing from the same playground. He also lived in the Martin Luther King Jr. Towers. I found his story not sadder than Christoper's by any means, but I found it really sad because his mother, Rosa, was older and she had tried her whole life to have a child and was never able to, and she became pregnant at a very late age. I don't know the backstory. She was a single mom, but she became pregnant at a very late age. He was like a miracle baby, and then at 19 months old, he was kidnapped. Both children went missing on a Thursday afternoon around 5 p.m. when the playground was very busy. So they went missing from the same playground. They lived in the same building, and they went missing on the same day of the week, which is, very quick for police to link them together. Rosa said that she was approached by 2 children in the playground aged 5 and 10, and that they wanted to play with Shane. She did say to them, "Are you sure?" because he's still very little, and they were like, "Yeah, we don't mind." So she sat down on a bench to watch him, and she said a man took place next to her, and she got distracted for a second because he had a lot of scars on his body, and she just kind of turned over to look at him. And in the few seconds it took, essentially, well, I'm a little bit confused because I think, I've heard it said that he started talking to her, and that's how she got distracted. And I've read online that she just looked at him and got distracted. I'm not sure, but either way, he was a distraction for her, and not a very long one. And when she looked back, Shane was gone. And I've also found that those 2 children were apparently also present when Christoper went missing from the playground. So obviously, a lot of people's immediate thought was those children were used as decoys. Now, they were both brought in for questioning along with their parents, and police concluded that they had nothing to do with it. But I can't help but question that. I mean, if they were there on both days and they specifically asked her if they could play with him, and then he went missing, and they didn't see anything, they didn't see any adult approaching him, they didn't see him running away, I find that fishy. I don't know in what capacity they would have been involved, whether it's their parents running a ring and they just use their children, or whether it's that a stranger paid them or gave them candy or something if they would just bring the boy to him. 5 and 10 years old, they probably weren't old enough to know what was going on. But I just can't imagine that they had absolutely nothing to do with it. Nor that man, really. Again, the man was questioned and found to that he talked to her. That's not a crime by any means. It's just a very sketchy coincidence that it happened at the exact same time that her son went missing. And what I also found heartbreaking is that Rosa said in the interview that she didn't know Christoper had gone missing. She had not heard anything about the disappearance. And if she had, she would never have taken her son back to that playground. And I think it's a problem being that he was a black child, being that it took place in Harlem, that people just didn't care enough, and that it wasn't reported widespread on the news, and that this mother who lived in the same building didn't even hear about it. I think that speaks volumes. Now, there's not obviously an awful lot that came out of this episode. I did a little digging online afterwards, but I couldn't really find anything. So Rosa said, and I don't think this was in the episode, that she got a phone call after her son went missing to say that her son was buried in an abandoned building, but police searched that and didn't find anything. There was a link to possibly another case, but it's unlikely they're linked because that baby was only a month old and they lived in Brooklyn and it was a different kind of situation. So I don't really know why they're linked, but it's definitely believed, and I believe that these two are linked. Now, I had a lot of hope that this was the one case that would get solved because they did age progression photos and both children had either a scar or a very specific birthmark, and I was like, there's a good chance that these children might be raised by someone else and are going to see this episode and be like, hang on, I have a birthmark like that. That could be me. And I really, for some reason, had so much hope that at least one of these kids was going to be able to come forward and say that's me, and that we were going to find out what happened. But it's months now since the episode aired, and I couldn't find anything online about this being solved. So there are some theories. One is that they were both taken by someone who couldn't have children and really wanted a child, and that they might be raised happy. That is also honestly the theory I believed the most at that time. But I would have expected one of them to come forward by now then if they were still happy somewhere. I mean, obviously not everyone watches Unsolved Mysteries, but I think it created enough buzz just online as well and in news and stuff like that about this case that I would have expected one of them to see it. I think that's always the hope that parents have, that if their child gets abducted, that it's by someone who's going to raise them lovingly, and I don't think it happens in a lot of cases, but it was kind of my first thought. Another theory is that they were taken by a baby adoption ring to be sold to couples who really wanted to adopt a reason, but for some reason the system wouldn't allow them to. I don't want to rule that out as a possibility, that they were sold to a loving couple, but again, then I would wonder why neither of them have come forward since. And then there's, of course, the worst theories that they were sold into a sex trafficking ring, or that they were taken by a serial killer, and that they're no longer alive. But they were so young, they were 2 years old and 19 months old. I mean, I know that serial killers don't necessarily have an age limit, but I just find that appalling to think of. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I don't want to say that police didn't do enough. They did do their investigations. I just but wonder if this had been any other place and any other children, if they wouldn't have tried a little harder. I don't feel like. But it was even brought up in the episode. In that time, police kind of stayed away from Harlem a little bit because there was something going on every day. So, I don't know. I have to question it. Also because of the building they lived in. I don't know. It's a tough case to cover because race is always a factor in these things. Always. As much as it shouldn't be, it always is. And I honestly, like in 89, I was 7. I really had no idea about the differences in race, and I didn't grow up in the US, so I don't know how bad it was in the 80s, but I can't imagine that it was better than it is today. I mean, I'm guessing it was worse back then. And I do think that's a factor in these kids not being found. Having said that, you know, a lot of kids go missing at that age and are never found, so I don't know. I still hope that they were raised by a loving family and that maybe one day they will see this and come forward. But because neither of them have yet, I somehow just don't have a lot of hope for that anymore. And it's been so long. It's been like it was 30 years in 2019. So at this point, it's been 32 years, which is a really, really, really long time for them to be missing. But yeah, I found this a very heartbreaking case. I found this, I don't know, I just found it fascinating that they both went missing, same day of the week, same playground, months apart, and that those children were somehow found not to be involved, which I just don't believe. But then I would also question why neither of them have come forward since, because the 10-year-old would now be 42. Like, if you were even just paid by someone back then, wouldn't you come forward with that now? You were 10, okay? They're not going to prosecute you. You didn't know what you were doing. But you could at least now come to police and say, oh, I saw this episode. Yeah, that was me, and I was paid by someone. So maybe genuinely not. I just find it really hard to believe that it's such a big coincidence that they were there on both days, but seemingly had nothing to do with it. And maybe that's just me being paranoid. Maybe they genuinely just wanted to play with him. I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of what there is in this case. And just some of my thoughts and opinions on it. Let me know if you saw it and if you still remember it.